I'm Curtis Nauman, and I'm going to be discussing the Leibniz fine-tuning and moral arguments for the existence of God. The Leibniz argument starts off with the premise that everything that exists has an explanation for its existence. The second premise is that if the universe exists, its explanation is God. And the third premise is the universe exists. From 1 and 3, we can find the conclusion that if the universe exists, its explanation, it has an explanation. And from 2 and 4, we can conclude that because the universe exists and it has an explanation, its explanation must be God. And in defense of these, first off, defining everything having an explanation for its existence, the key factor is things that necessarily exist. Craig makes the argument that God necessarily exists because without a beginning, without something to start everything in motion, nothing could exist. And atheists try to tear this down or say that the universe exists necessarily, which is invalid because the universe could have taken a different route, and also it doesn't make logical sense to say that something came out of nothing. As for the second, there is no other explanation that has been made that explains the beginning of creation, the beginning of the universe. So, based on TOE, the theory of everything, we are still left with no valid explanation other than God. As for the third premise, it's pretty obvious that the universe exists since it's within our scope of senses to realize that what's around us is real, and without that, we are kind of left in complete and utter state of confusion, because if we don't exist, then how does anything make any sense at that point? 4 is a logical conclusion, as well as 5, so without denying the first 3 premises, we are left with the argument that God is the only explanation for the universe, therefore God exists. Next, we have the fine-tuning argument. This starts off with the natural constants and the natural constants and other subjective quantities that are arbitrary. With the natural constants and arbitrary constants, we define our world. Natural constants such as gravity, weak force, strong force, and thermodynamics explain the way in which things interact within our world based on the arbitrary quantities. Those arbitrary quantities being things like the seconds in the universe, which I believe is around 10 to the 17th power, which is significant, and just thinking of it, 10 with 7 zeros after it, 17 zeros after it, it's a huge number. And with the particles subatomic particles in the universe being around 10 to the 80th power, we begin to realize how infinite and